obviously in construction we have there's an issue with stigma. There's an issue with construction being the ugly stepchild. And if you haven't gone to university or college, then you're going to have to go to construction. Or if you're not good enough to go there, then you have to go to construction.
I jump in on that one?
In just a second.
Okay.
I told you he'd occupy the entire freaking thing, but anyway. The thing with the STEP program that Richard talked about, OGCA is also involved in STEP to ICI construction, which is fantastic. And a lot of times where, you've got these students who, for a number of years up until grade 11, all they're told is that they're stupid. And it's only when they actually get onto a construction site that they're told, wow, you really know your shit. We really want you to work here. That's amazing. And that's the first time they're given words of encouragement. So I hate to say it, but the school system isn't doing anything to advance construction. And to Richard's point, we do a really poor job of it ourselves in promoting all the technological advancements that we do in construction. The problem is that no one knows about it because we don't actually pat ourselves on the back on a regular basis. And that's why being in front of audiences like you really allow us a conduit to communicate how amazing careers in construction can be and how technologically advanced they're becoming. When you've got foremen that used to, spend hours and hours of reams of paperwork, and now it's a tablet. And as soon as the truck comes, they scan a barcode or they hit enter, and it's broadcast throughout the entire company, and accounting receives it, and they start processing, and inventory control receives it, and the next PO is issued, and the next truck is issued. It's all done with the tap of a button now. It's amazing how integrated we are to technology, and we've got vendors outside who talk about construction management programs and everything. And so the utilization is high in construction. We just don't do a really good job of talking about it. So I think the next question I want to hit before Richard takes over, but
No.
what do you see as the largest impediment to more people entering into a career in construction? Is it that our industry is lagging in technologies, or are there other factors? And I'm going to actually go to Bart first before I get to Richard, because
I'll hog it.
he sucks all the air out of the room. So Bart, please.
I will.
Again, I think we're back to the critical issue of trying to get more awareness. And I know at the high school level, trying to drive that change is probably one of the critical things. When we did a survey of our own members within the concrete industry, I didn't know if it was a factor of nepotism, but when 30% of the people that we're hiring in the concrete industry are the sons and daughters of people that are already there, why is that? It's not because they're handing jobs off to family members. It's because they see it at home, they hear about it, they see the passion, and that's what pulls them in. So quite frankly, in the concrete industry, it's family and friends of the workers that we currently have. That's where we go. There's not enough at the school level, and we need to be more proactive in helping out at that level. I'll hand it off now.
I'm gonna have the mic again, because again, if we go to Richard, then we only have 15 minutes.
Story of my life.
I'd say three things to think about. Skilled Trades Ontario right now is working on PD days for counselors to try to address exactly the issue that Richard's talking about, to raise their awareness that here's a professional pathway that should compete all across the way, whether it's a college, a university, or a trade. They're all equal, and we're trying to work on the counselors to bring them around. We can bring the counselors around. The next thing I think we need to do is celebrate. Celebrate every success we can find, and I'll give you quick examples. I'm sitting on a dock with my two daughters, and Nick comes over in his boat. Okay, my daughters are 24. Nick comes over in his boat, and I'm talking a dinghy. And I look over and I'm like, Nick? My daughters go, oh yeah, he's an electrician. He's already bought his first home. My daughters have school debt. Or I have school debt, maybe. And then the OGCA, I was lucky enough to attend one of Giovanni's events where he celebrated women in construction. And it was everyone from somebody who started as an electrician or a plumber or a trade and moved up, and now they were executives leading construction companies. And a lot of educators will say, if the person can see themselves in that person who's successful, we've got a better shot at them walking through that door. So that's really important. And then I'm going to finish. I said 3, I'm going to 4. My 4th is everybody look left and everybody look right and decide whether when you leave here, you can employ one more apprentice.
Yeah.
Is there not a reason we can't put one more apprentice? And my commitment on my team, right? My chief of staff is here. Brian's in the room somewhere. He's got a bunch of cards. If we can deliver on making the pathways easier to get into, deliver for us, take one more apprentice. I didn't say take 10, take one more apprentice. I'll stop there.
It's, Mike is at where the rubber hits the road is the placement opportunities for apprenticeships. And we've got to start, again, treating employers like educators. They are educators because that's where the students are learning. And we know what the value is of the end game there. We know what it's costing us right now to fail in systemically on getting this set up right. So there's a real thing. Now, the one thing I was reacting to is for as long as I can remember, you know, I've heard about, well, the parents don't want their kids going into it and there's a stigma and whatever else like that. I think the stigma thing was real. I think that's pretty much gone now. And the thing with the parents, I've always said that was complete shit. That was used systemically as an excuse not to change the system. Because I said, okay, talk to me about the parents. What are we talking about? How many parents don't want their kids going into skilled trades? 50, 60, 70, 80%? Yeah, okay, whatever, you know. So what? We don't need 50, 60, 70, 80%. We just need 10 to 15% of the annual graduating classes to meet our needs. So this argument is bullshit. What we're not doing is we're not reaching the kids that we should be reaching, that are lost in the system, and then they get into trouble and they whatever, and then they go off, and then we end up with a 28-year-old apprentice down the road for the ones that finally come around and say, you know, hey, I want to do this. And so I've always had a real problem with that. And then I was going to leave you with a story. Like I got very close to this. Long story there. It's a learning challenge with one of my daughters. I've got 3 beautiful daughters. I've got a son. He's great. And one of my daughters, I mean, they all look like runway models, not because of me, but the one was a complete visual learner. So the problem, she was bailing out of school, so had to go off separately, get all these tests done. Luckily enough, I can afford to do that. We can afford to do that, and found this out. That's how she learned. So what's she doing now? She's in landscaping. She's in design. She's totally visual. You give her a list of things to do, forget it. You know, for various reasons. If it's a list of chores that she has to do, that's definitely forgotten. But you give her a list, not going to happen. She sees it visually. She remembers it. She's right on. She is incredibly talented in making anything. And but you wouldn't have known that. You would have, you know, typically in our society we would have said, well, she, you know, should be doing this over here. That's not her thing. But no, she learns, and more boys than girls are visual learners. But this is where these aptitudes. The school didn't have a clue about, you know, what the problem was and whatever else like that. So we had to find out separately. So, you know, it's the systemic changes. We can do it. I don't have any doubt about that. I think we're on the right track. Mike with STO, fantastic. Employers like Bart with their programs are very aware. They know their numbers. They know what they need. We know the numbers now. We didn't at one point in time. It was kind of funny. I mean, I was at the beginning when we set up Bill Force years ago, because I said nobody knows what our needs are because the education system's not paying attention to it. They know the college needs, and they know, you know, all this other stuff, but this area we don't. So we've made tremendous progress. It's very positive. It's very exciting. The really exciting thing for young people is that you have these brilliant careers ahead of them. And just one last quick story. We were looking at offsite modular construction, and we were over in Germany and whatever else like that, going to a factory there. We met Gerhard and Hans, you know, the 2 guys that are running it. One's the chief engineer, one's the business model guy. You look at their resumes. What's the first thing? This is a wood, mass timber, cross-laminated timber. You look at their resume. What's the first thing What's the first thing they got? They got their CAQ in carpentry. They became a certified carpenter in Germany first. Then they went on, because they were ambitious, they went and got engineering degrees, and then they both had MBAs, but in that order, right? But they knew everything about that factory. They knew how to make stuff, right? And we're not doing that well either here or over, but that's why they're an advanced manufacturing economy in the world, right? Sorry, buddy.
So, not to worry, I'm used to it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit each panelist. I'm going to ask them for their closing remarks when it comes down. I'm going to give them 1 minute so you guys can time Richard, in all honesty, and then like ring a bell or something. And the question I want to ask them in the last minute is, how do you see technology and innovation assisting the construction industry and attracting people to construction in order to address the labor shortages that we have in Ontario? Let's start with Bart.
You mentioned before the adoption of technology, so tablets. We've got 4,000 ready-mix trucks, about 1,500 now, each have a 10-inch by 10-inch tablet. Not just, I won't bring it up from electronic ticketing and the processing side, but you add into that safety features, like the first person on the job site does the safety evaluation. That evaluation automatically gets kicked over to every subsequent driver that's coming to the job site. There may not be a safety issue in the area that they're working, but there's a pit adjacent to where we're placing concrete. That kind of information could be handed off. In the concrete industry, you're not just a driver, you're also secondary batcher. So now we've got sensors that do drum rotations. It measures the hydraulic pressure. It tells you what the slump of the concrete is, so you're not gonna have issues with the contractor or the subcontractors on the job site. So it's trying to automate the safety processes and automate the technical processes to make it easier for the driver. So you're driving a $400,000 ready-mix truck. What can we do to make the job easier? You got to have the desire to drive, but you also have to have the desire to build and interact with the contractor on the job site. I'll stop there.
Michael?
I'll stick to Skilled Trades Ontario for a moment to dodge your question a little bit. If you sign an RTA, one of the challenges has been, it's one thing to sign it and have that apprentice show up on the site. It's another thing to make sure they get through all their hours, get through their schooling components, and actually pass their exam. So when we think about that, what can we do to help the employer, and I mean it that way, the employer first and that person trying to go through so that they can actually see 6 months from now, because young people, to stereotype for a moment, might not be that organized vis-a-vis the list approach. Can you help them get through so that they're not going to school for the first time after they've been through 3 terms of their hours? That's number one. There's a pilot program in Ontario right now because our statistics, to jump forward for a moment, they've got all through their hours, they've got all their schooling done, and now they're about to sit an exam, and our exam pass rate is miserable. Right? It's under 50% in Ontario. It might be the worst in the country. I'm guessing that. So don't quote me on that, for God's sake. But there's a 40-site pilot going on right now to say, why do you have to go to a government building to write your exam? Couldn't I write my exam where I learned? Most teachers are saying, if you write your exam where you learned, you've got a better chance of succeeding just from just a pure comfort level. So 40 pilots suggest to us early on that we're going to increase exam pass rates significantly by moving to not just pilot, but permanent stuff. So that's in the works. I leave you with simply, come and talk to us about the barriers that remain, right? Pick up the phone. Don't turn the cheek. Pick up the phone and say, Skilled Trades Ontario, I'm still running into this barrier. This is why we're struggling with my apprentice getting through the system. Keep talking to us because we want to improve the system. We'd never sit in front of an audience like this and say, we've got it perfect, right? We need to keep getting your feedback, and then we have to deliver on having listened and done something. So stop there.
With a minute and a half left, Richard.
So it's bizarre that construction still to this day is treated like the employer of last resort. We still have many decision makers who have a view of construction of people running around beating things with hammers and, handling shovels. And while that work does happen and it is a part of construction, construction is a technology industry. It has been. A lot of good things a lot of really interesting things have been happening in the adoption of technology and construction at the skilled trades level. Tools, lasers, think about things like that. I could tell you a whole bunch of different stories there. I won't. But that is just expanding where we are not, again, systemically executing. Canada, Ontario is the only jurisdiction in the G20 that does not have a BIM mandate, which is building information modeling. We could be using things like digital twins and digitization and all these other things a lot more. I was involved with a project that we funded through UFT Engineering where we're trying to figure out how to get as-built drawings updated every 24, 48 hours. So the question is, how can you fly a drone into a concrete structure and where it doesn't hit the wall and crash, right? things like that. And once you can do that, then there's a whole bunch of things that rule out of that. But the message for young people too is that construction is even on, look at the equipment, concrete trucks, and like these are incredibly sophisticated pieces of equipment. There's a lot of technology involved there, but construction is technology, and that message has to get out. This is not some knuckle-dragging sector. And as I said to you before, where we're going, different ballgame. We're going to be, the era of drones and robots is here, and it's for the better because we'll be able to take some very dangerous work. And who watches the bomb squad go in now? What goes in first? It's the robot, right? There's a reason for that. Who do you send into a tunnel that's got toxic fumes in it or whatever else like that? If you can send a robot in, you're going to do that. We're doing more and more things like that. So construction is technology. Technology is construction.